Chapter 6. Now it came to pass when Sanballat and Tobiah and Geshem the Arabian and the rest of our enemies heard that I had builded the wall, and that there was no breach left therein, though at that time I had not set up the doors upon the gates, that Sanballat and Geshem sent unto me, saying, Come, let us meet together in some one of the villages on the plain of Ono. But they thought to do me mischief. And I sent messengers unto them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease, whilst I leave it and come down to you? Yet they sent unto me 4 times after this sort, and I answered them after the same manner. Then sent Sanballat his servant unto me in like manner the 5th time, with an open letter in his hand, wherein was written, It is reported among the heathen, and Gashmu saith it, that thou and the Jews think to rebel, for which cause thou buildest the wall, that thou mayest be their king, according to these words. And thou hast also appointed prophets to preach of thee at Jerusalem, saying, There is a king in Judah, and now shall it be reported to the king according to these words. Come now therefore, and let us take counsel together. Then I sent unto him, saying, There are no such things done as thou sayest, but thou feignest them out of thine own heart. For they all made us afraid, saying, Their hand shall be weakened from the work, that it be not done. Now therefore, O God, strengthen my hands. Afterwards I came unto the house of Shemaiah, the son of Delaiah, the son of Mehetabel, who was shut up. And he said, Let us meet together in the house of God within the temple, and let us shut the doors to of the temple, for they will come to slay thee. Yea, in the night will they come to slay thee. And I said, Should such a man as I flee? And who is there that, being as I am, would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. And lo, I perceived that God had not sent him, but that he pronounced this prophecy against me. For Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. Therefore was he hired, that I should be afraid and do so, and sin, and that they might have matter for an evil report, that they might reproach me. My God, think thou upon Tobiah and Sanballat according to these their works, and on the prophetess Noadiah and the rest of the prophets that would have put me in fear. For the wall was finished in the 25th day of the month, Elul, in 52 days. And it came to pass that when our enemies heard thereof, and all the heathen that were about us saw these things, they were much cast down in their own eyes, for they perceived that this work was wrought of our God. Moreover, in those days the nobles of Judah sent many letters unto Tobiah, and the letters of Tobiah came unto them. For there were many in Judah sworn unto him, because he was the son-in-law of Shechaniah, the son of Era, the son of Johanan, and had taken the daughter of Meshullam, the son of Berechiah. And they reported his good deeds before me, and uttered my words to him, and Tobiah sent letters to put me in fear. Nehemiah here relates some interesting deceit from Sanballat and Tobias and others. And one of the things he says is, as soon as they heard that he had repaired the wall, so there was no broken part of the wall, although the gates were not totally fixed, so there was doors on them and bars on them, but they were restricted areas, so that even if the walls were up, then you had to go through the doors, and they could have guards at the door. And so that helped protect Jerusalem. But the other thing he made the point of is they tried to, Sanballat and Tobias tried to get him to come outside the city walls so that they could do some harm to him. And they did this 4 times. And he wasn't going to go. He didn't go. And the 5th time they sent a letter in with Sanballat's servant and basically said, we're going to tell the king, unless you come out to negotiate with us, we're going to tell the king that you've repaired the walls, which of course was what the king sent him to do. The king sent a special letter with Nehemiah so that the man who was in charge of the king's forest would cut down trees so he had timber to repair the walls. Nehemiah knew this, no big deal. But if he didn't come out to negotiate, they said they were going to send a report that Nehemiah was trying to make himself the king in Jerusalem, all the rest of this. I have a feeling Artaxerxes would have laughed himself silly to get that, if only because he knew Nehemiah's heart. He knew that Nehemiah was well-to-do, wasn't taking any extra out of it, knew that Nehemiah had covenanted to go back to spend time with the king as his cupbearer, and knew what Nehemiah was there to do and knew his integrity. So he didn't pay any attention to that whatsoever. Then he finds out that there's this fellow who tells him that Nehemiah should go to the temple and shut the door, so he's hiding in the temple, because if he doesn't do that, there are guys that are going to come and kill him. And he says, who am I that I should hide? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm not going to hide from these guys. And then he finds out that there are other people who are in the pay of or owe favors to Tobias and Sanballat, or that are married to relatives of Sanballat. And he names some of them. And basically, when he finds that out, he realizes that he has enemies within Jerusalem as well as enemies without Jerusalem. And he knows what he has to do in order to make sure that the right things get done for the right people at the right time. It's nice to know who your enemies are, but I don't think he even remotely thought that among the Jews who were living in the city, who may have appeared, remember some of them didn't put their necks to the work very good. I don't think he thought that he would have traitors, and he had this Tobias fellow had spies all over the place. And some of these people were telling, oh, Tobias, is a wonderful guy and all the rest of it, and then they're turning around sending letters out to Tobias telling Tobias everything that Nehemiah was saying. You can't operate like that. So he when he found out who it was, he had to get rid of them. There's two things to think about here that we really haven't covered yet, but which we should. First off is, why was Sanballat and Tobias so hostile to the Jews? First thing we think is that Tobias was from Moab, and Moab had been conquered by David previously, and so there was a certain strong anti-David, anti-Jewish feeling there. And Sanballat was the governor of Samaria, which until Nehemiah arrived had been part of Judah, had been part of the Samaria. Now the governors of the various provinces of the kingdom of Persia, the Empire of Persia, had a responsibility to send money to the Persian king as taxes. And so every year they would send out a list of what they were supposed to provide. Now, on top of that, because the governors were expected to be provided for out of the taxes that they collected, the governors had the tendency to collect a huge amount more from everybody than they ever needed to. And they would send off to the king a share, which sometimes would be a quarter, sometimes less than what they collected. And they keep 2/3 to 3/4 for their own well-being, knowing that they lived 6 months to a year travel away from the king, and the king would never know. And when Nehemiah arrived with letters appointing him governor of Judah, that meant that a good part of the terrain and the grain growing area and the vine growing area and the produce that was grown in Judah would no longer be taxable by Sanballat. And anything he could do to upset that, make it not work, anything he could do to get the king to take it back, was potentially to his advantage. So we follow the money. We see Sanballat had a very good financial incentive to try and stop the work.